I would like to introduce our next speaker, Sam Krop, who is Neuse Riverkeeper at Sound Rivers Incorporated. Sam, Sam, thank you for being here. Sam is a Neuse Riverkeeper with Sound Rivers, which is a nonprofit that advocates for the health of the Neuse watershed from Durham to the Pamlico Sound. A native of Florida's Gulf Coast, Sam spent summers growing up on the shores of the South Toe River in North Carolina's Black Mountains. Sam has spent her entire adult life working at the intersection of education and environmental advocacy. She gained experience in environmental education working as a high school and university instructor in Oregon, and later gained skills in policy advocacy and community organization working as a coalition's organizer for forest and watershed conservation nonprofits throughout the Pacific Northwest. After 10 years out west, Sam returned to North Carolina to work in defense of the Neuse River watershed and all those who rely on it through water sampling, public education, community organizing, and political advocacy. Today, she will be talking about the unique qualities of the Neuse River Basin and giving us a rundown of the historic and ongoing water quality issues in the river basin, as well as Sound River's work to address them through science, advocacy, and community outreach. Sam, thank you so much for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrew, for that great introduction. And thank you for the invitation to speak today, and to everyone who is here in attendance. I am really grateful for this opportunity to share a bit about what we do here in the Neuse River Basin, which I'm sure has a lot of connections to the work that everyone here is doing wherever they're zooming in from. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Is everyone able to see that?
Yep, we see it.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, as Andrew said, my name is Samantha Krop. I also go by Sam, so either one is fine. And I am the Neuse River Keeper with the nonprofit Sound Rivers. We are an organization that was founded with the merger of two organizations, which were the Neuse River Foundation and the Pamlico River Foundation, and we were established in 1980 and 1981. So for all of that time, we have been committed to monitoring and protecting both of those river basins. We are home to two river keepers. So I work on the Neuse. My colleague Katie works on the Pamlico Tar, or the Tar Pamlico River. And I'm going to share a little bit about some of the work that we do, and again, some water quality issues with a special focus on stormwater and the implications of stormwater pollution and stormwater policy and stormwater programs that we've been seeing play out here in the watershed. But first, I would love to share a little bit about, first of all, what is a river keeper? What is this role? And more about the Neuse River. As Andrew said, we are doing a lot of different kinds of work as river keepers in the watershed. I like to describe the role as being part investigator, part scientist, part educator, part lobbyist, part advocate, and a public spokesperson for the river. So I typically say that I work for the Neuse River and all of its tributaries, and also for all of the people who rely on and utilize the river itself. River keepers are also part of a network. So actually North Carolina can proudly claim the title for most river keepers of any state in the country. There are 15 of us in North Carolina, and we have a coalition that we work together on numerous issues that affect all of our watersheds. And under that coalition, Water Keepers Carolina, we address all kinds of water quality issues from bacteria and sediment pollution, stormwater runoff, algal blooms, and the like. And that coalition is also nestled within an international coalition called the Waterkeeper Alliance, which is made up of river keepers and water keepers from all around the world. So we're part of a pretty broad network, obviously working around a lot of different issues, but I like to think of it as a really great source of ongoing resources and information. So wherever you're at, you can look up who your local river keeper is and get connected with them. And in our work, in our investigative work, I like to sort of explain a little bit more of what that means. Sound Rivers is a hotline. And so you may hear my phone ringing in the background. I'm here in our Raleigh office. There's all kinds of noise in the downtown area, but we often get calls from community members who are living along the river, fishing on the river, recreating, enjoying it, and who notice something that might be not right. People call in illicit discharge issues. People call in algal blooms, fish die-offs. People call in with rezoning concerns when a significant land use proposal is coming forward for decision and they want to know about the impacts that it would have on water quality. And so as river keepers, we investigate all of the concerns and the reports that we get to the best of our ability. Sometimes that looks like going out on the ground, grabbing water samples. We do a lot of different sampling for various parameters, from bacteria and sediment to PFAS and those sorts of emerging forever chemicals that we're only recently learning to understand. Sometimes we get up into tiny planes and we fly actually around the watershed and conduct aerial investigations as part of our routine aerial monitoring program. And through that program, we're able to identify a wide range of issues that we wouldn't normally be able to see on the ground. And so that's been a really helpful tool. We work in partnership with an amazing nonprofit called South Wings, and they provide free flights by volunteer pilots. And we're so appreciative of that. And then I also say, you know, we do community investigations. I am living and based here in Raleigh, but I spend a quarter of my time down in Newbern, which is on the lower part of the Neuse watershed, and a lot of time in communities in between. So we do a lot of community meetings and engaging with people on the ground to learn how we can best support them and what kinds of issues they're dealing with. So at this point, I'd love to share a little more about the Neuse River Basin. I don't know how many of folks on the call are calling in from the Neuse River Basin. I know that this is on the eastern side of our state, and a lot of folks here are probably based in the Piedmont and the western portion of the state. So I'm going to share some fun facts about the Neuse River. I think I would be a bad river keeper if I didn't brag on my river at least a little bit. But the Neuse River is a pretty incredible place. It is 275 miles long. So that river itself starts at the Falls Lake area in Raleigh-Durham and makes its way 270 miles through Clayton, Goldsboro, Kinston, Newbern, Oriental, all the way out to the Pamlico Sound. That area itself, the shape here that we're looking at, includes both the upper and lower portions of the watershed. So in total, the watershed is actually 6,235 square miles. So every drop of water that falls within that 6,235 square mile shape eventually makes its way into the Neuse River at some point. And that shape covers 18 counties, and it's home to roughly 2.5 million people in the basin. The upper basin provides drinking water to Allway County and a lot more folks. Just to hammer home to y'all that this is a really important and really large river basin. It's also, fun facts, the longest undammed river contained completely in the state. That was after the Milburnie Dam was taken out, which was a great environmental feat. And it, at the mouth in Oriental, has the largest 6 miles wide mouth of any river in the country. Actually, if you're standing in Oriental and looking across the Neuse, it looks oceanic. You can't see the other side. So it's a pretty unique, pretty huge river and a pretty diverse area. I was lucky enough when I first got this job about a little more than a year and a half ago, to have the opportunity to really learn about the river and the communities along the way by paddling it. And so I was joined with 2 others who paddled 150 miles of the river. So we started actually in Smithfield and ended down in Newbern. And through that paddle and through the subsequent work that I've been doing from the tippy point of the watershed in Person, Orange counties, all the way to the Pamlico Sound, learned a lot about just how many faces the Neuse River has. So I want to give you a bit of a visual tour of those faces before I get into some of the water quality issues that we're seeing and working on as Sound Rivers. So one face that I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with, this is the drinking water supply in the upper watershed that I brought up. There's numerous drinking water supplies in the upper watershed. This is one of the most significant drinking water for Raleigh and many others in Wake County. Falls Lake. The Neuse itself actually is born just above Falls Lake with the merger of the Eno and the Flat River as they meet and then enter Falls Lake. That is the Neuse. Getting down into Raleigh, this is the location of the former Milburnie Dam that is no longer there. And so now there's some rocky shoals. It's the only whitewater on the whole Neuse inside of Raleigh. And as you get further east, you're getting into the land of the cliffs. If you haven't been to Cliffs of the Neuse State Park, I highly recommend it. It's a pretty incredible geological formation. You can actually see the many layers of different kinds of sediment that have accumulated over time and then been washed away by the river itself, so that you have these pretty impressive looking cliffs. The park itself is beautiful, and at this point the river takes on a totally different face than it looks in Raleigh. And as you get down to Kinston, the river gets wide, a bit more swampy, slower. And in Newbern, it takes on the estuarian characteristics. It has salty and definitely much wider. You get to the Croatan and you have incredible Pocosin communities, wetland communities. Another place that I would highly recommend folks visit is the Croatan National Forest. And then all the way out at the mouth of the Neuse River in Oriental, this is where I mentioned before, the mouth is 6 miles wide. This is a proper fishery. This is an incredibly significant estuary and fishery and a really popular place for folks to recreate and to just get out and enjoy what feels like the big beach. So that's just to give you a little bit of a visual of the many faces of the Neuse River. And I also want to address the fact that the Neuse River has a pretty troubled history. In the 1990s, the river was actually on the brink of catastrophe. It was plagued by excessive nutrient issues, nitrogen and phosphorus, mostly from agriculture and wastewater runoff, and polluted stormwater runoff from all of these urban areas that are mostly in the upper watershed. Actually, fish were dying by the millions every day for a period of time in the late 90s. And toxic algal blooms were threatening the river as a source for drinking water. So there were questions about the viability of the Neuse, not only to support aquatic life, but to support human uses like drinking water. And folks who swam in the river complained of strange burning sensations, sores. And as you can see, this is a photo of some dead fish, but this, this all led to the Neuse being declared one of America's most endangered rivers in 2007. And this was after, multiple years of nominating the river. It was declared, I believe, number 8 on America's most endangered river list. So that is, before and sort of the encouragement and incitement of so much investment and action taken around the Neuse to address these issues. In fact, so much investment and so much so many good watershed works have been done since this time that today, this year, actually last year, the Neuse River was awarded River of the Year. So this is to kind of demonstrate the progress. The River of the Year nomination award, it does not mean that the Neuse River is cured. It does not mean that there are no more water quality issues in the river. But what it does mean is that we've come a very long way since the 90s. And we've come a long way since the time where this river was considered one of America's most endangered. So it was an acknowledgement of all of the progress that's been made, and simultaneously all of the work that must still happen in order to bring this river up to the promise of the Clean Water Act. In many places, this river is still not fishable, swimmable, and drinkable. And that is ultimately our goal. So at this point, I'm going to dive into some of the actual water quality issues that are ongoing on the Neuse. The ones that we have sort of encountered, documented, and monitored on a regular basis as Sound Rivers. So these are all things that are continuing, photos that I've taken in my work on the Neuse River. Again, not specific to the Neuse. This is an issue that I think everyone on here can probably relate to, sediment pollution and stream bank erosion, especially in our more rapidly developing areas, and especially in places where we have sensitive soils and sort of soil challenges. We're seeing real significant sediment pollution coming from land clearing developments, and post-construction, we're seeing increased volumes of stormwater runoff that are leading to bank incising and erosion. And of course, problems for folks who are living in and around the river. Just to hammer home a couple pictures of the extent of that sediment pollution, these are some photos that I took. I've been spending a lot of my time monitoring sediment pollution in southeast Durham County, in an area that has historically been very vegetated and rural, and is now seeing significant development and conversion of green space to impervious surface. And with that boom in development against a backdrop of complicated and sensitive, highly erosive soils, we're seeing sediment levels that are often an order of magnitude higher than the state standard of 15 nephelometric turbidity units. So this is a significant water quality concern. The photo on the top right is some macroinvertebrates. So not only are we doing turbidity sampling, but we actually have gone out with benthic macroinvertebrate specialists to document the presence and absence of aquatic species and aquatic species diversity in these impacted waterways. And what we're finding is not a surprise, shouldn't be a surprise, but the creeks that are more impacted by sediment pollution have less of a diversity, and especially less of a quantity of the sensitive kinds of macroinvertebrate species than those that are less impacted by sediment runoff. We see problems with riparian buffer and wetland loss, especially in the context of the loss of federal wetland protections as a result of the Sackett decision, and then the subsequent loss of state level wetland protections as a result of the General Assembly's decision this year. We're seeing significant loss of wetlands, which of course is tied to flooding and other problems, water quality issues. We see litter. This is the most visible issue that everyone here, I'm sure, can relate to, especially in our urban areas. We do creek walks in some of our critical urban tributaries, and trash is the #1 most visible issue that is really plaguing our water. Algal blooms and fish kills. So despite the fact that these were far more prevalent in the 90s in the history that I was sharing, they're ongoing. Algal blooms and fish kills continue to occur. This summer actually was a particularly bad one for the Neuse River. We had hundreds of thousands of menhaden coming up from New Bern down to Oriental in the lower watershed. And this is, of course, a symptom of nutrient pollution. So we have not yet solved the excessive nutrient issue. And bacteria, with all of the stormwater runoff carrying litter, carrying nutrients, it also carries bacteria. We see old and outdated infrastructure, sanitary sewer overflows. We also see just bacteria running off of the land and carrying everything with it into our waterways. So we do pretty robust bacteria sampling all around the Neuse and the Tar-Pamlico watershed as well. And climate change. I would be remiss to not mention this significant background condition, which is, of course, a significant challenge to water quality, both in the water boom piece of it, where we are dealing with flooding and excessive water, and also in the bust piece of it, where we're dealing with drought, and we're seeing our salt wedge moving further and further upstream and challenging some of our freshwater ecological communities. So I'm gonna be less depressing for a little while here. That was a bit of necessary background on the problems that we deal with every single day, but now I want to talk about solutions. So going a little bit back in history, we, as a response to the horrific fish kills and nutrient algal blooms in the 90s, there was, as I mentioned, significant action taken to address that. And one of the most important action taken was the establishment of the Neuse nutrient strategy. Established in 1997, the goal was to reduce nutrient levels in the estuary by 30%. The 30% nitrogen reduction goal was established. It also established a lot of parameters for sort of getting there. So the goal was no net increase in peak flow leaving construction sites from pre-development conditions for 1 year, 24-hour storms. They also encouraged the use of best management practices. So this is the introduction of really encouraging land use changes to incorporate and agriculture to incorporate best management practices to meet that nutrient reduction goal. And the establishment of 50-foot riparian buffers on the Neuse and its tributaries. This is huge. It has been the incredibly, I would say, the single most impactful step to reducing nutrient pollution is protecting those riparian buffers. And now in the Neuse and all of its tributaries, including lakes and ponds and estuarine areas, we have a 50-foot mandatory vegetative buffer, which has been huge for this area. However, I will say, despite significant reductions in point source pollution, the Neuse is still not meeting our 30% nutrient reduction goals. As I mentioned, we're still having fish kills, algal blooms, and the like. Recently, the Neuse River rules were updated. In 2020, there was a revision and a readoption of these rules with further kind of measures to try and even further reduce nutrient levels, since we were not yet meeting those goals. And those further methods included streamlining nutrient calculations, encouraging on-site stormwater management as opposed to off-site mitigation, incorporating best available science and more BMPs. And that led to a trickle-down result. So what we're seeing now is municipalities updating their stormwater ordinances. The EMC actually, I believe next week, is about to hear, I think, 20 different new municipal stormwater updates that are all meant to bring municipalities in compliance with these updated nutrient rules. And I just noted one here, one of Raleigh's, which is just a shift away from off-site management to requiring everything over 24% impervious surfaces to require a primary on-site SCM, and that's huge. Other things that municipalities are doing to mitigate nutrient pollution are creating local cost shares and incentive-based systems to encourage private homeowners to reduce, to keep stormwater essentially on their property rather than letting it run off. So Raleigh, I may be biased because I live here and I love this city, but has an incredible amount of programs available to private homeowners. On the right-hand side is just a map of all the places that Raleigh has helped create green stormwater infrastructure in the city on people's private homes and private properties, businesses, by paying up to 90% reimbursement of the cost. So these on the left are just a few of the programs that Raleigh operates that we are really proud of and that go a long way towards addressing water quality issues and nutrient pollution. And of course, I have to mention Sound Rivers programs. We also do a lot of what I call good watershed works. what my bubby would have called little watershed mitzvahs. But we, try to address both the nutrient and stormwater pollution issues through our own programs. And one of those such programs is the Litter-Free Rivers program. Wherever you're zooming in from, you might have a trash trap in your community. This is something that all of the water keepers in North Carolina worked on together. And we installed these passive trash collection devices in creeks across the state. And as you can see on the right, they sit, and as the current carries trash down, they collect that trash. And then we get together with community and we clean it up. And so we have these in Raleigh, in the Neuse watershed in Kinston, and in New Bern, and also several places in the Tar watershed, and like I mentioned, throughout the state. We also have a swim guide program. If you are not connected with this is another great free public resource. During the summer months, we sample at locations throughout both watersheds that people like to swim and recreate in, and we let them know every single week for free what the bacteria levels are and if they are under EPA's standards for swimming. For primary recreation. So that's another program you can just sign up for, and you can get a free text throughout the summer. And we work hand in hand with a lot of universities and elementary and middle and high schools to hook them up with green stormwater infrastructure projects. We have a program director on staff who goes out and helps folks install interns, rain gardens, bioswales, all kinds of creative, innovative green stormwater infrastructure projects on their sites. And so I just wanted to mention also that, beyond these good watershed works that Sound Rivers is doing, and beyond the adapted changes that are being made right now to accommodate and meet the updated Neuse nutrient strategy, there are also ways that local municipalities can update their own ordinances to better protect our waterways. One example is in the town of Cary. They established mass grading limits so that you're not able to grade, I believe it's more than 30 acres at a time, it could be 25 at a time, which obviously goes a long way for limiting sediment runoff and stormwater issues. Meanwhile, Durham is also looking at adopting numerous sediment and erosion control regulations. They actually just adopted updated sediment and erosion control regulations, and also tree retention regulations in their own UDO. So there's a lot of different ways that municipalities are sort of stepping up to the plate of reducing nutrient loads in the Neuse through creative local actions. I have just a couple more slides, and then I'm happy to open it up to questions. But I wanted to acknowledge the collective challenges that we all are facing as we attempt to meet our nutrient goals and generally address water quality challenges. Rapid growth is something that we're seeing not just here in Raleigh and Durham, but all over the state. I know folks are encountering the need for more housing and more housing now, and that looks like the need to expand, and we have to meet those needs and needs for housing while also upholding the promise of the Clean Water Act, and that is a collective challenge. Cumulative impacts, of course. Sensitive soils, I've mentioned in places like Durham, Southeast Durham, where I've been working, we have the Triassic Basin, which poses specific kinds of soil, sensitive soil issues, erosion issues. The high cost of BMPs, just to acknowledge that some of these innovative BMPs are simply expensive, and maintenance is also an important factor. State limitations when it comes to updating unified development ordinances. We have to be cognizant of the fact that there are state preemption issues, which pose challenges for kind of creating local protections. That said, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of municipalities are finding creative ways to work around those and to implement more water quality protections in their localities. And then, of course, climate change is just always going to be a collective challenge that we need to address together. And so the last piece that I'll share is just opportunities that Sound Rivers and our partners have identified on the horizon. through the work that we've been doing, we certainly do a lot of reactive work where we're responding to water quality concerns, but we also try to do a lot of proactive work where we're thinking ahead about solutions. And so some ways that we see paths forward that we see, especially in our work with local municipalities, in our work encouraging stronger unified development ordinance updates, we see opportunities for the preservation of green space. All of our watersheds have a lot of green space that are, in many cases, currently being converted at pretty rapid speeds to impervious, to developed areas, and strategic conservation, preservation of green space is a critical opportunity. That goes hand in hand with wetland conservation, especially in the context of the Sackett decision that I mentioned earlier. This is an opportunity to not only improve water quality, but also reduce flooding impacts. It's a climate resiliency measure. Riparian buffers. I know the Neuse is a special place for having the 50-foot riparian buffers, and I will say that in many cases that's not enough. There are many locations where, we have further protections, 100-foot, 150-foot buffers in place. And really, 50-foot is a minimum buffer for water quality. On-site stormwater treatment, I've mentioned green stormwater infrastructure and innovative best management practices, planning for a changing climate. So the opportunity is starting to think about planning for not just the 25-year storm, but the 50-year storm, the 100-year storm, especially as our precipitation maps are changing. Tying water quality outcomes to stormwater management. That's kind of a wonky one, but it's important to us because we want to see that our stormwater regulations are actually tied to an outcome of clean water, which means, having water quality sampling and having, water quality, clean water outcomes attached to regulations. And then locally driven planning, site specific, paying attention to the specific needs, not just the geographical location and the soil, but the needs of the community and the history of areas. Every location we work in is so different. And so really thinking creatively on a local level in partnership with communities and hopefully with nonprofits like Sound Rivers. So with all of that, I will leave it there and say thank you very much for this opportunity to share a little bit about what we're doing. I'm happy to open it up and answer some questions if folks have them.
Yes, thank you so much, Sam. Right now we don't have any questions in the chat, but I have a few while people brainstorm some questions. Well, first off, it looks like a beautiful river. I need to get down there and kayak it. It sounds really cool that you got to do that for your job. How long did it take to do those 150 miles?
We took it pretty slow. We did it in 11 days. We were kicked off the river for one of those 11 days with Hurricane Ian. And when we got back onto the river, it was a totally different river. We barely had to paddle. We were moving. But we took it nice and slow. Part of the point was to sort of document water quality issues. We were connecting with community along the way. We had great turnout from folks all along the way who were showing up and making us food on the side of the river and really being incredible. But all in all, we took 11 days to get from Smithfield down to New Bern.
That's awesome. Okay, we have one question in the chat. Lamar Moss asks, what General Assembly laws impacted the Neuse River and what laws would you like to see passed?
Thank you. That is such a great question. I will mention a couple that just pop out to me. One, I think I mentioned state preemption issues, and I think that's just the background situation that our municipalities are challenged with dealing with, is just figuring out where authorities lie and what authorities municipalities actually have to enact local protections. But this particular year, the General Assembly did pass a pretty harmful wetlands rider, which attached our state to the new and unfortunately challenged and ever-changing and uncertain federal definition of wetlands, which essentially opened up 50% of North Carolina's wetlands to dredging, filling, and ultimately possibly destruction. And so the issue is that we don't exactly know where all of these threatened wetlands are. And so there's sort of a gap in understanding of how these implications are going to look on the ground. But number one, we would like to see the General Assembly reinstate our state wetland protections, which apply to not just wetlands with a surface water connection, but to wetlands that are now being called isolated. Additionally, there are a number of problematic bills that went through the General Assembly that essentially stripped some of the required regulations for new developments. We're seeing a pretty strong lobby coming in and having some real fingerprints on some legislation around development and building. And so we saw essentially bills aimed at making it unnecessary for new developments to pursue some of the environmental permits that they've been historically required to pursue, and just sort of shortcutting the process for skirting around environmental regulations. That category is huge. There's a lot of different bills that came through under that category. But essentially, we would like to see baseline protections reinstated, but some of the things that I mentioned, attaching water quality outcomes to sediment and erosion control and stormwater regulations, that would be a huge step in the right direction.
Okay, next question is from Keith. He says, could you tell us more about Raleigh's efforts to help pay for up to 90% of costs for stormwater management practices on private property? How is that funded by the city, if you know? And how are decisions made about which private property projects to fund and how much? And is it working out well? I can repeat that if need me to.
Oh, it's okay. I have it in front of me.
Oh.
Thank you, Keith. That is a great question. So I have the privilege of being on the Raleigh Stormwater Management Advisory Commission, and so I'm a new member. So I'm still learning about all of the ins and outs of our programs, but this particular program, the Raleigh Rainwater Rewards Program is what it's called. And it does fund up to 90% of the cost. And we actually are exploring adding another opportunity to get 100% of costs covered for folks who would qualify as environmental justice or underprivileged, marginalized community areas. So we're thinking not just in terms of water quality, but also in terms of environmental justice. The program is funded through the stormwater fee. So it's the public utility fee. That's where it comes from. And essentially the idea is that for those who want to improve water quality on their property by doing anything from a cistern, a rain garden, a bioswale, it's a cost share program. And so they put in an application and the determination of how much, what percent, whether 75 or 90% is covered is simply based on the location in the watersheds. So we have two watersheds. The Walnut Creek watershed is one of them that is impaired. And so if you have a project in the Walnut Creek watershed, you're eligible for 90% coverage because it's an impaired waterway and there's a need for more good watershed works in that area. And it is working. It's working to the extent that we're actually, looking at expanding the program. And if anyone is interested in, more information on that, I would be really happy to pull a list of the projects that we've done, the money that's gone into it, and some outcomes if people are interested.
Yeah, I'm also happy to connect anybody that is interested in talking more with the speakers if they didn't answer all the questions you have. Yeah, Michael Huffman just responded to Keith's comment with a link to an article called Apply for Raleigh Rainwater Rewards. It looks pretty informational, so check that out. And our next question is from Shay Washburn. She says, wonderful presentation, thank you. Due to the continuing blooms and fish kills, how did that impact the recreation for locals and tourists? Are there temporary no fishing periods to aid in the rebuilding of the populations?
Yeah, it is hugely impactful when there's a fish kill. As someone who operates a hotline, we get so many calls, and we're so thankful for them, which I should say, here, we're so grateful for folks who call in concerns. But, we get calls from people who, run fishing tours, and this is tied to their well-being and their job security. We get calls from folks who like to fish and who obviously can't. People are wondering whether it's safe to eat blue crab when there's a fish kill. People, wanting to swim and recreate in the summer months and wanting to boat. Fish kills are not only aesthetically displeasing, but they are, they smell, and it's definitely not a situation that people want to be around. So really impactful. There are, as far as I know, there have not been no fishing periods established as a result of the fish kills since I've been working. I will say most of the fish that are dying are menhaden, who I always say if you look at them sideways, they die. They're very sensitive species. This summer we did actually have what locals informed to me is called a jubilee, which is when sunfish actually get up and walk and die too, which is more concerning for sure. But we're not seeing, it's not typical that we're seeing a huge diversity of species being impacted. It's really the sensitive species who struggle with the low dissolved oxygen.
Yeah, when you said the part about people swimming in the river and getting a burning sensation, I didn't know that that was a thing that nutrients, like too much nutrients or algae could do. Um, but yeah, I have another question. I'm just wondering, because your job seems so fun, what's your favorite part of your job?
Oh my goodness. My job is very fun. My favorite part is working with community. I've had the opportunity to connect with all kinds of folks, incredible folks doing really good work in the places that they live. In 5 minutes, I'll be taking off to Southeast Durham to meet with some elected officials and walk around in a creek. So that's my favorite part, is kind of getting to know our waterways, getting to know the people who love them, and then connecting our decision makers with those people in those places, and hoping that to encourage them to do the best on behalf of our water.
That's awesome. I'm a little jealous of your your job, honestly. It sounds important and fun. Um,
Well, we need more river keepers, so everyone is welcome to join.
yeah. Um, one more question, because I don't see any more in the chat. But one more that I came up with is, first of all, I like the little segue at the beginning when you said that's the longest river. Did you say in North Carolina or United States without a dam?
Yep, in North Carolina. It's the
Okay,
longest undammed river contained in North Carolina.
nice. Yeah, I like that little segue from the last presentation. I forget when you said the dam was removed on the Neuse River, but I was wondering if you knew when it was removed. Was there any clear recovery of the ecosystem around it or anything like that?
The dam removal, so the removal of the Milburnie Dam, which was in Raleigh, it's been celebrated as one of the most significant steps that environmentalists have taken to recover, to essentially recover ecology and ecological systems in the Neuse. It was taken down in 2017. So relatively recently. It's a relatively recent victory. And I don't know if I can speak to, the specifics of what folks have seen on the ground in terms of recovery, but I will say, an undammed river is a healthier river. And so in this place, there's still like a great little public park and an area sort of commemorating the dam that used to be there that isn't anymore. Certainly for fish populations who can now migrate from Falls Lake freely, and certainly for aquatic species, but also for those who are trying to recreate and paddle the river, it's a better place for it.
Awesome. Okay, if no one else has any questions, we're about at time. Sam, thank you so much for presenting today. We were so happy to have you. And yeah, we hope to stay connected in the future.
Well, thank you all very much for the opportunity, and I will just drop my email here in the chat in case anyone would like to reach out. But yeah, please consider us a resource, and I love input and feedback on presentations as well. So don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.